I recently got rejected from another job that I applied for, not because of my skill set, but because I did not live in the same state of the job that I applied for. And I wanted to give a little rant. But before I do, let me give you some context. So I applied to a job in Nevada, and I was hoping they would be open to considering me as a remote employee. And I had a phone interview, and it went very well. The skills that I listed and this experience that I have was very relevant, and it was perfect for this position that I was applying for. But unfortunately, the HR lady that I spoke to, who was in charge of screening all the resumes, she said that the company culture had a strong emphasis on on-site employees, and she described that the company had an open office space, and she described how all their employees are collaborative, and they all sit under the same roof, and whenever people have questions, they just tap each other on the shoulder, and they enthusiastically communicate to each other, and that is something that they are proud of. And sadly, they did not make an exception to hire me as a remote employee because I could not move to Nevada. As you know, I am in California, so there's no way I could have moved there. Also, it wouldn't be worth moving there because their pay range wasn't that impressive. But I was just hoping that I would get a remote job and work for a company in Nevada. But unfortunately, no exception there. So what I wanted to rant about was open office spaces and the fact that a lot of companies try to sell this false theory that having an open office space and having everyone be on site is a way to increase productivity and collaboration. But that is false. If you've ever worked in an office environment, you would know that having an open office environment is actually counterproductive. And I wanted to just give my experience in working with an open office space because I've worked in an open office space, and this was for a company pre-COVID, so this was normal to go in the office 5 days a week, but it was probably the most stressful, most unhappy I've ever been in a job in my entire life. This was like, it felt like every time I went to the office for this job that had an open office space, it felt like I was walking into a room full of cancer in the air. I felt like I had some sensory issues. It felt like my stress and anxiety would skyrocket as soon as I stepped foot into an open office space. And what's wild is that the work itself, my managers, my bosses, and my coworkers were fine people. They weren't the ones causing the stress. The workload was not the cause of the stress, although it was, sometimes. I'm not saying it was an easy job. It wasn't. It was still stressful. But just the open office space and the actual work environment, not the atmosphere, not the culture, the actual building and the environment and the table I sat in is what made the job probably 60 times more difficult than it could have been. The reason is because I think a lot of people that work in technology or white collar job or any job that requires you to do a lot of deep thinking, a lot of research and problem solving, a lot of these people are introverted. I'm introverted, and a lot of people that gravitate towards these jobs are just naturally introverted because I find that when you're trying to solve problems and do deep work and read documentation on things, it's preferable to be in your own personal space where you have, you could be in your own mental comfort zone so you could really be optimized mentally. Now, if you're a salesperson or you're a person that needs to be face to face and present things to investors, obviously you would need to thrive in a chaotic, messy environment because that's part of your work. But if you're someone where you gravitated and you pursued a career in doing deep work, I think For a company to force you to sit in a distracting, brightly lit, open office space is very counterintuitive, and you're doing a disservice to your employees, especially if your company relies on the quality of work of these people. I said a lot, and I'm going to say more. Back to the job that didn't hire me for, uh, being on site. I think a lot of companies, they're, it's obvious they're doing the return to office policies, but at the same time, it's like they're losing a lot of talent because they're limiting their reach of potential employees to living next to them. We live in the age of the internet, right? There's this emphasis on the advancement of society using technology. We have the internet, it's been around for a while. We have cameras, we have telecommunication, we have all these technologies that allow us to communicate with people all around the world. So you would assume if you have a company, you would want to pull the best talent from all over the country or the world. But yet we have so many companies that are intentionally limiting their potential in hiring people because they want people to be on site. So they're going to say, "Hey, we live in a small town like somewhere in Nevada, but we only want to pull talent within a 10-mile radius in the state of Nevada." So all these tech people that are coming from California, New York, Chicago, screw it. We don't want them. They're not going to provide value because what we care about is micromanaging people, and we care about viewing what you're doing on your screen like this. So, I don't know. I think companies that operate that way operate from a place of insecurity, because you don't want it's like they're scared to actually have the best talent that they can, and they'd rather just get mediocre talent but just micromanage them and then have them in the office. The last thing I want to talk about, or not the last thing, the next thing I wanted to talk about is the whole theory of companies thinking that having an open office space reinforces collaboration, but that's so false. I've worked in an open office space, and there was this one time where I wanted to actually go up to the lead engineer and ask a question, and he sat like close to me in an open office space, and I sat next to my manager, and I needed help on something. I need to ask a question. So I asked my manager, but he didn't know. So I looked at my manager, and I was like gesturing to him, "Hey, I might tap the lead engineer behind me to ask them the question." And this was an open office space, by the way. And my manager looks at me and says, he's like up here. My manager's telling me like, "You should probably leave him alone because he's the lead engineer and you don't want to bother him." So that made me realize this whole theory of open office space is complete nonsense, because the one time I actually do want to be collaborative and reach out to someone, it's discouraged by my manager, even though we work in an open office space. So at that point, I'm like, we could have just had cubicles. And I'm sure a lot of you know, like, if any of you are watching this and you worked in an office environment, I'm sure you could vouch for yourself that an open office space does not increase productivity. It does not increase communication, because most people are introverted. Most people aren't going to be all socially, like a social butterfly in an office environment. It's not, like, working in an office is not like a Pixar movie where everyone looks happy and they can't wait to work together. I was naive when before I started working, but the moment I started working, I realized most people want to be left alone, and they're willing to help, but you need to approach them and give them a heads up through email or Slack, or if you know them well enough, then yeah, you can ask questions. But overall, when people are working, they really don't like when other people kind of like abruptly ask them questions. Um, that's just what I've seen. Personally, for me, I don't have a problem with people asking questions because I like helping people. But I found that whenever I want to ask questions, I felt like I was bothering people in an open office environment. So that is me disproving that point of increased collaboration. That's all bull crap. The other thing, the other reason why I think companies prefer open office spaces is because it's cheaper. It's a lot cheaper to build an open office space because you don't have to deal with building individual cubicles and worrying about the individual storage spaces and tables and stuff like that. If you just build and design an open office space, not only could you save a lot of money as a company, but you could aesthetically make your office building look modern and look hipster for like I guess a selling point of the company. You could be like, oh, this is our company culture with our nice wooden tables, like the flat long tables, like the same tables you see at those overpriced burger joints. Yeah, they use the same type of like layout, and then their excuse is, oh, it increases collaboration and working together. But no, I think even they know that that is bullcrap. But what they do know is that it's cheaper to build, and they can easily sell it to investors and sell it to employees. That the reason why they're doing this one long table layout is for collaboration. But most employees don't like it, and I don't like it. So that's my rant. That is my rant today because I was denied the opportunity to work for a company remotely because they wanted me to be an on-site employee sitting at a big open office space. And even if I wanted to, I couldn't go because I don't live in Nevada. I can't afford to move there. But yeah, life is full of disappointments, but you just got to keep going. Anyways, what are your thoughts about the open office space? I don't know about you, but I'd rather work in a traditional old school cubicle than an open office space. And I'm actually quite jealous of, the white collar workers of the early 90s and early 2000s and the years before then, before this whole gentrification of the office space became a thing where, companies started doing open office space. Like, there needs to be a company that brings back cubicles because I'd be so much happier just working in a cubicle. Ideally, I'd be the happiest working remotely, but if a company has a return to office policy, at least give us the cubicle back. Make cubicles great again. That's a hashtag. Make cubicles great again. I did that. Anyways, if you have any stories about your experience working in an open office space, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. If you disagree or agree with me, and subscribe. I'm gonna rant a lot more in the future. I'm sure more bad things will happen to me, and that will be a reason to make more content. So if you could relate to this, or if you think this was entertaining, leave a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.